We become reactive to changes in our environment, and our emotional well-being becomes subject to forces beyond our control. For example, someone who depends on their job for a sense of identity may feel lost or devastated if they lose that job. Similarly, someone who depends on a partner for emotional validation may struggle with feelings of inadequacy or abandonment when the relationship ends. Krishnamurti's insight: freedom through non-attachment. Krishnamurti teaches that true psychological security cannot be found through attachment or dependency. Instead, he advocates for non-attachment, which does not mean detachment or indifference, but rather an understanding that nothing external can provide lasting emotional security. When we recognize this, we free ourselves from the fear of loss and the need to cling to external sources of stability. Non-attachment allows us to engage fully with life without becoming dependent on any one thing for our emotional well-being. It creates space for authentic relationships, where we can connect with others without expecting them to fill a void within us. It also frees us from rigid belief systems, enabling us to approach life with curiosity, openness, and a willingness to embrace uncertainty. Conclusion: the illusion of security, the search for psychological security, while understandable, can ultimately limit our potential for growth and freedom. When we place our emotional well-being in the hands of external factors, we become trapped in a cycle of attachment and dependency. These attachments offer a false sense of security, and the fear of losing them only deepens our sense of insecurity. Krishnamurti's teachings remind us that true security cannot be found outside of ourselves. By embracing non-attachment and recognizing the impermanence of all things, we can break free from the limitations of psychological security and experience life in its fullness, without fear, dependency, or constraint. Seeking security through routines, societal roles, and relationships. Why these fail to offer lasting peace. In the search for stability and comfort, many people turn to routines, societal roles, and relationships to provide a sense of security. These structures, whether in our daily lives, social positions, or emotional bonds, promise to give us a solid foundation. However, as Jiddu Krishnamurti and other philosophers have pointed out, these external forms of security often fail to deliver lasting peace. Instead, they can create dependency and leave us vulnerable to disappointment when they inevitably change or fall apart. Security through routines. The comfort of familiarity. Routines offer predictability. Many people find comfort in the structure of daily habits, waking up at the same time, going to work, and performing familiar tasks. These routines create an illusion of control over life's uncertainties. For example, a person might follow a strict morning routine, believing that it helps them maintain order in an otherwise chaotic world. While there is nothing inherently wrong with routines, the problem arises when we rely on them as our primary source of security. Life is unpredictable. Illness, job changes, or unexpected events can suddenly disrupt our carefully constructed routines. When this happens, people who have relied too heavily on their routines may feel lost or anxious. The comfort they once derived from the predictability of their habits vanishes, and they are left with the underlying fear and uncertainty that the routine was masking. Practical example: the overscheduled professional. Consider the case of a busy professional who relies heavily on their daily schedule to feel grounded. Every minute of their day is planned: work, exercise, social engagements. This routine creates the illusion of stability and control. However, when an unforeseen event, such as a personal crisis or a sudden workload increase, interrupts the routine, the person may feel overwhelmed. The routine, which once provided security, is revealed to be fragile, and the underlying anxiety about life's unpredictability resurfaces. Societal roles. Identity through social status. Societal roles offer another form of perceived security. Many people derive a sense of identity and self-worth from their role in society, whether as a professional, parent, or member of a particular community. For example, someone might find security in their status as a successful businessperson, believing that their social role gives them purpose and value. However, societal roles are not fixed. Careers can change, children grow up, and social dynamics shift. When people place too much emphasis on their societal role as a source of security, they become vulnerable to feelings of loss or inadequacy when that role changes or diminishes. Practical example: the retiring executive. Take, for instance, a corporate executive who has spent decades climbing the ladder and building a successful career. Their identity and sense of security are tied to their professional role. When they retire, they may feel adrift, no longer having the status or daily responsibilities that once defined them. Despite financial stability, they struggle with a loss of purpose, revealing that their sense of security was never truly internal, but dependent on their societal role. Relationships, emotional security through others. Many people seek emotional security in relationships. Whether it's a romantic partner, family member, or close friend, relationships offer comfort and support. The belief is that these emotional bonds can provide safety from life's challenges, loneliness, and uncertainty. While relationships can indeed bring joy and fulfillment, relying on others for emotional security can lead to dependency. People change, and relationships evolve. A romantic relationship might end, or a close friend may move away. When we depend on others for our emotional well-being, any disruption in the relationship can leave us feeling unmoored. Additionally, this dependency can strain relationships, as we place unrealistic expectations on others to provide us with a sense of stability that, in reality, can only come from within. Practical example: the dependent partner. Consider someone who depends heavily on their partner for emotional security. They rely on their partner to make them feel valued, loved, and safe. However, over time, this dependence can lead to possessiveness and fear of abandonment. If the relationship faces challenges, the dependent partner may become consumed by anxiety, fearing the loss of their primary source of emotional security. When the relationship does end, the person is left not only with heartbreak but with a profound sense of insecurity, highlighting the dangers of relying too much on others for emotional stability. Why these forms of security fail to offer lasting peace. The problem with seeking security in routines, societal roles, and relationships is that all of these are external and subject to change. Routines can be disrupted, societal roles can shift, and relationships can end. When we attach our sense of security to things that are inherently impermanent, we set ourselves up for disappointment and anxiety. Krishnamurti teaches that true security cannot be found outside ourselves. As long as we depend on external factors for peace of mind, we will live in fear of losing them. Real security comes from within, through self-awareness, acceptance of life's uncertainties, and a willingness to let go of attachments to the things that give us a false sense of stability, moving toward inner security. To find lasting peace, we must shift our focus from external sources of security to cultivating inner resilience. This involves recognizing the impermanence of life's circumstances and learning to navigate uncertainty with an open mind and heart. When we stop clinging to routines, societal roles, or relationships for security, we free ourselves from dependency and the fear of loss. Instead, we can develop a sense of internal security by embracing the present moment, being adaptable in the face of change, and fostering self-compassion. This approach allows us to engage with life's unpredictability without being overwhelmed by it. Conclusion: the illusion of external security. While routines, societal roles, and relationships can offer temporary comfort, they ultimately fail to provide lasting peace. Relying on these external factors for psychological security creates dependency and leaves us vulnerable to fear and anxiety when they inevitably change or end. True security comes not from clinging to the external, but from cultivating inner strength and adaptability. By embracing life's uncertainties, we can free ourselves from the limitations of attachment and find a deeper sense of peace within. Exploring the dynamics of relationships, the source of both attachment and conflict, relationships are central to the human experience. They offer connection, companionship, and emotional support. Yet they can also become a source of tension, attachment, and conflict. The complexity of human relationships lies in the fact that while they provide deep fulfillment, they also awaken our insecurities and fears. which can lead to emotional dependency and struggles for control. The nature of attachment in relationships. Attachment in relationships begins with the desire to connect. We seek closeness with others, hoping to find understanding, affection, and validation. This desire for emotional intimacy is natural and can foster deep bonds. However, attachment can also lead to dependency, where our sense of well-being becomes intertwined with the presence or behavior of the other person. For instance, in a romantic relationship, a partner might become emotionally dependent on their significant other for validation and happiness. They might rely on their partner's attention and affection to feel valued. Over time, this dependency can become problematic, as it places undue pressure on the relationship. The fear of losing the other person or of being abandoned can lead to possessiveness, jealousy, and controlling behavior, which often sparks conflict. Practical example: the insecure partner. Consider a relationship where one partner is deeply insecure about their worth. They seek constant reassurance from their partner, fearing that if they do not receive it, the relationship may falter. This need for validation creates a cycle of dependency where the insecure partner becomes more attached, and their emotional well-being hinges on the behavior of the other. When the partner fails to meet these emotional demands, conflict arises, often in the form of arguments about feeling neglected or unloved. In this way, attachment in relationships can foster emotional turmoil. The role of expectations and control. Another source of conflict in relationships arises from the expectations we place on others. When we form close bonds with people, we naturally develop expectations about how they should behave, think, or feel. These expectations are often rooted in our own desires for security and comfort. When the other person fails to meet these expectations, conflict often follows. For example, a person might expect their partner to show love in specific ways, through words of affirmation, acts of service, or time spent together. If these expectations are not met, they may feel unloved or undervalued, leading to frustration and conflict. The problem with expectations is that they often go unspoken, leaving room for misunderstandings. Moreover, when we expect others to fulfill our emotional needs, we may unconsciously try to control their behavior, which breeds resentment and frustration. Practical example: the expectant friend. Take a friendship where one person expects their friend to always be available to talk, listen, or spend time together. When the friend becomes busy or distant, the other feels neglected and hurt. This disappointment arises not because the friend has done something wrong, but because the expectations were unrealistic or not communicated. Over time, such unmet expectations can sour the friendship, leading to feelings of betrayal or conflict. How attachment leads to conflict. The very nature of attachment involves a desire to hold on to something or someone. We become attached to the idea that certain people or relationships will fulfill our emotional needs, provide us with security, or make us feel complete. This attachment creates dependency, and from this dependency arises fear, the fear of losing the relationship, the person, or the emotional connection we've built. As attachment grows, so does the desire to protect the relationship from any perceived threats. Small disagreements, differing opinions, or changes in behavior can be seen as threats, leading to conflict. The more attached we become, the more likely we are to try to control the dynamics of the relationship, which only leads to more tension. Practical example: the controlling partner. In a romantic relationship, one partner may become so attached that they begin to monitor the other's actions closely. They may feel threatened by their partner's friendships, hobbies, or independence, believing that these outside interests could weaken the bond between them. In their effort to preserve the relationship, the controlling partner may impose rules or expectations, demanding more time or attention. This creates conflict, as the other partner feels suffocated or restricted, ultimately pushing them away rather than strengthening the bond. The illusion of control in relationships. At the heart of many conflicts in relationships is the illusion of control. When we become attached, we believe that we can control the outcome of the relationship by managing how the other person behaves, feels, or thinks. This illusion of control creates a power struggle, where both individuals may try to impose their expectations or needs onto the other. However, true emotional security cannot be derived from controlling others, as each person in the relationship is autonomous and capable of change. Relationships are dynamic and fluid, constantly evolving as individuals grow and change. When we cling to attachment and control, we resist the natural flow of change. This resistance leads to conflict because the other person may feel restricted, pressured, or misunderstood. Practical example: the parent-child relationship. In a parent-child relationship, parents often develop strong attachments to their children, especially regarding their future. They may have specific expectations about the career paths, relationships, or life choices their children should follow. If the child deviates from these expectations, the parent may feel hurt, disappointed, or even betrayed. This desire to control the child's path can lead to conflict, as the child strives for independence while the parent clings to their vision of security for their child. Moving toward healthy relationships, letting go of attachment. To create healthy, conflict-free relationships, we must shift away from attachment and the illusion of control. This doesn't mean we stop caring about our relationships or the people in them. Instead, it means we cultivate relationships based on mutual respect, trust, and emotional independence. By letting go of unrealistic expectations and the need to control outcomes, we allow our relationships to evolve naturally and healthily. Krishnamurti teaches that love and connection should come from a place of freedom, not attachment. True intimacy arises when we are able to engage with others without trying to possess or control them. When we let go of attachment, we can experience relationships in their purest form, where both individuals are free to be themselves. And conflict diminishes because there is no longer a struggle for control. Conclusion: the paradox of attachment and conflict. The dynamics of relationships are complex, but much of the conflict that arises is rooted in attachment and the desire for control. As we seek security in relationships, we become attached to specific outcomes, behaviors, or expectations, which leads to dependency and, ultimately, conflict. By recognizing the limitations of attachment and embracing emotional independence, we can create healthier, more fulfilling relationships that are free from the struggles of control and conflict. In the teachings of Jiddu Krishnamurti, relationships are seen as a central aspect of human life. Yet they are often fraught with complexities that hinder true freedom. According to Krishnamurti, when relationships are based on dependency and attachment, they can become obstacles to liberation, trapping individuals in cycles of emotional need and psychological insecurity. Krishnamurti emphasized that relationships built on dependency are driven by fear and desire, the fear of being alone and the desire to find comfort in others. This dynamic leads to attachment, where one becomes emotionally entangled with another person, seeking validation and fulfillment externally. However, this form of attachment creates a dependency that can lead to control, possessiveness, and ultimately, conflict. In essence, when we rely on others for our sense of security or happiness, we are no longer free. True freedom, Krishnamurti suggested, arises when individuals enter relationships without the baggage of dependency and attachment. This doesn't mean abandoning relationships, but rather approaching them with an understanding of their potential pitfalls. By being aware of our tendencies to depend on others, we can cultivate relationships that are rooted in mutual understanding and compassion, rather than in need or fear. To Krishnamurti, freedom comes from recognizing the impermanence of relationships and embracing the idea that no one can complete us. When we let go of the expectation that others will provide us with security, we can experience relationships in their purest form, without attachment or dependency, allowing for true connection and freedom. This approach requires a deep inward journey, where we confront our fears and desires, dissolving the internal conditioning that drives dependency. Only then can we engage in relationships with openness and clarity, free from the emotional entrapments that block our path to liberation. Transforming relationships into spaces of genuine connection and freedom begins with the idea of approaching them from a place of independence and unconditional love. When we bring independence into our relationships, we shift away from relying on others for our happiness, self-worth, or emotional security. Instead, we learn to stand on our own while embracing love in its purest form, love that is free from expectations, demands, or conditions. At the core of this transformation is the understanding that we are whole as individuals. Often, relationships are entered with the hope that someone else will complete us, but this belief places an unfair burden on the other person and leads to emotional dependency. True independence in relationships begins with self-awareness and self-acceptance. When we understand that our well-being comes from within, we no longer look to others to fulfill our unmet needs. This inner sense of completeness allows us to engage with others from a place of abundance rather than lack. Unconditional love is another key to transforming relationships. Conditional love places expectations and demands on the other person, creating a transactional dynamic where love is given only when certain conditions are met. This often leads to frustration and conflict because no one can consistently meet all of our expectations. However, when we approach relationships with unconditional love, we love and accept the other person as they are, without trying to change or control them. In practice, this means letting go of the need to constantly shape or influence the relationship to fit our desires. Independence and unconditional love go hand in hand, as we allow others the freedom to be themselves, while also recognizing that our happiness doesn't depend on their behavior. This approach fosters trust, respect, and openness, allowing relationships to flourish naturally. By cultivating independence and love without conditions, we free ourselves from the limitations of attachment and dependency. This transformation enables us to experience relationships in their most authentic form, where love is shared, not out of need, but out of genuine care and mutual respect. In this way, relationships become an opportunity for growth, understanding, and connection, rooted in freedom and acceptance. A brief pause, thought-provoking questions for reflection. As we journey through life, we often absorb a wealth of knowledge, experiences, and insights. However, the value of what we learn only truly unfolds when we pause to reflect. Reflection isn't just about revisiting what we've encountered, it's about engaging deeply with our understanding, questioning our perspectives, and challenging the assumptions we hold. Here are a few thought-provoking questions to guide your reflection. What resonates with you the most so far? Think back to the lessons or concepts that struck a chord. Why did they stand out? What about them feels relevant to your current life situation? Have your perspectives shifted? Growth often begins with a shift in mindset. Have any of the ideas you've encountered led you to rethink your beliefs or attitudes? If so, in what ways? How can you apply these lessons in your life? Learning is most powerful when it translates into action. Consider how you might implement some of the principles or insights in your everyday life. Are there specific steps you can take to integrate these lessons? What challenges do you foresee in applying these lessons? Often, the hardest part of learning is putting it into practice. What obstacles might you face as you try to adopt new ways of thinking or behaving? How can you overcome them? Are there any lingering questions? True reflection often leads to more questions. Are there any concepts or ideas that remain unclear? What do you need to explore further to deepen your understanding? How do these reflections align with your long-term goals? Take a moment to connect what you've learned with your broader life goals. Does it align with where you want to go? How can these new insights contribute to your personal growth and future ambitions? Reflection is a powerful tool for personal development. As you consider these questions, allow yourself the space to delve deeper, challenge yourself, and embrace the process of learning and growing. This brief pause might just be the catalyst for profound transformation. Remember, reflection isn't a one-time event, but an ongoing practice that helps refine who we are and what we aspire to become. Reflecting on relationships, how conditioned responses shape our perceptions. Relationships are a central part of our lives, and whether they involve family, friends, or romantic partners, they shape who we are. Yet, we often don't realize that much of how we perceive and interact in these relationships is conditioned by past experiences. Societal norms, or unconscious responses. Take a moment to think about your relationships. Have you ever noticed patterns in how you respond to certain situations or emotions? Perhaps you find yourself pulling away when things get difficult, or maybe you tend to overreact when you feel misunderstood. These reactions may not be a result of the present moment, but are likely shaped by past experiences or learned behavior. A conditioned response is an automatic reaction to a particular stimulus, often learned over time. In relationships, we may develop these reactions based on past experiences, both positive and negative. For example, fear of abandonment may cause you to be overly attached or controlling in relationships. Fear of vulnerability might make you distant or emotionally unavailable. Early experiences of love or rejection can shape how we view trust and affection in adulthood. In many cases, these responses are so ingrained that we act on them without conscious thought. This can lead to misunderstandings or unhealthy dynamics, as our partners may not understand the root of our reactions. To gain insight into how conditioned responses may be shaping your perceptions, consider the following questions. Do you notice recurring patterns in your relationships? Reflect on whether certain situations or emotions repeatedly trigger the same reactions. Are these patterns helping or hurting your relationships? How did your early relationships, with family or caregivers, influence your current ones? The way we were treated in our formative years often sets the tone for how we expect to be treated as adults. Do you find yourself expecting the same behavior from others? Are your responses based on the present moment or past experiences? In moments of conflict or emotional intensity, ask yourself, am I reacting to what's happening now, or am I influenced by something from the past? Do societal expectations affect how you behave in relationships? Think about whether you act a certain way because it feels true to you, or because it's what society deems acceptable. The first step in freeing yourself from these automatic responses is awareness. By recognizing the patterns and understanding their origins, you can start to approach your relationships with greater mindfulness. It's also important to communicate openly with your partner or loved ones about these dynamics so they can understand and support you through the process of change. Transformation in relationships begins when we look inward, question our conditioned responses, and choose more conscious, compassionate ways of interacting. In doing so, we allow for deeper, more authentic connections. By reflecting on how your past has shaped your present, you can create more fulfilling and resilient relationships, free from the limitations of conditioned responses.